Welcome to So Very Easy. My name is Laura, and aprons are a lot of fun to make because there's so many different fabrics that can be turned into aprons. It could be our favorite fabric, or it could be fruits and vegetables, or just fun fabrics. And making children's aprons to match adult aprons can also be a lot of fun. So today I'm going to make a child's apron with a little scalloped corner, and the fabric is going to be really fun too. I found 2 apron patterns, one for an adult and one for a child. I do want to make the apron that has this little scalloped edge, and they do have something very similar in the child's pattern. That pattern E does have that little scalloped edge. I will be making it reversible, and I'm going to omit the lace. The fabric for that reversible apron will be this Northcott fabric with these cute little unicorns and a striped fabric for the other side. I will be making the smallest size, which is a child's 3. And the pattern does have the scalloped edge. And I do not want to ruin the original pattern, so I've made a copy of that size 3. The apron has a little heart pocket. The top is going to be gathered, so it will go onto a waistband and then ties. So to cut out the pattern, I'm going to place the fabric right sides together and press them together. You can place that fabric down and cut it out. The pocket is this little heart shape, and we need to cut this out 2 times for 1 pocket. And because that apron is going to be reversible, I will now need to cut it out 4 times. So I will do 2 of one fabric and 2 of the next. This small waistband will only need to be cut out once, and I'm going to be cutting it out on that striped fabric. For the ties, we need 2 pieces cut, one for one side, one for the other. And just to have some fun, I'm going to have a tie in one fabric and the tie in the other fabric. So I'm going to pin these on my fabric and cut them out. When this has been cut out, we can pin that edge. We already have right sides touching. Stitch a nice small stitch all the way along the edge. If you use a small stitch, it's easier to turn these corners and get to these points. And the seam can be a 1/4 inch seam allowance. When that row of stitching has been done, we need to notch out this fabric. Our first notch is going to come right into that seam. We're not cutting the seam, we're just getting really close to it. And then we are going to notch out all of these little curves. This little notching is going to help this turn right side out, and it's going to keep these in a nice flat, beautiful circle. That notching really does leave a beautiful smooth edge. We can now do a row of top stitching all the way around this edge and leave this top open. With that top stitching done, we're going to be able to make our heart pockets. It's going to be done in a very similar way. The apron is going to have pockets on both sides, so I do need 2 pockets. I've matched right sides together. I'm going to stitch all the way around and leave a little bit of opening. Continue using those small stitches, and we're going to be able to get around these curves. And then just like the curve on the bottom, we're going to snip all of these edges. Our little heart pockets do need to be stitched on each side of the apron. Now, if I had thought of this before, I would have sewn the pockets on first before I sewed those layers together. But we can still sew them on by just separating this fabric. Lay the pattern out, and because you can see through this tissue, I will be able to lay that pattern in the spot. I'm just going to separate those layers and pin. The original pattern was not designed to make this reversible, so I did forget this step. Put this under the machine and still stitch it down. With those cute little pockets on both sides, we now are going to be able to take care of this top. The pattern has 2 notches, which have been transferred on the back of the fabric. Those notches will match the notches in this waistband. We will need to gather this up so that the notches match, and that little dot on the side is going to match that dot on the side of the apron. So let's start by gathering up this top. There are many ways to gather this apron, but a little row of hand stitching really will work quite fine. I will be using a double strand of a very strong polyester thread. and just weave that in and out of the top of that fabric and go through both sides. I'll be gathering this waist right on to the waistband. The waistband has a center line, and I've matched that up to the center of the apron. The band also has those 2 notches, so I will bring this over and pin those notches so they're going to match, and do that to both sides. So I have this area that I'm going to need to gather. Take the end and bring it towards the end. We will need a little bit of this waistband coming off of the apron. Pin the one side and the same for the next. All of these little areas can now be gathered up. I have the thread on the one side, thread coming off of the other. And just pull those threads slightly, and now I'm going to be able to adjust those gathers. Those pins are keeping everything in place, so now I can adjust those gathers. And as I adjust them, I'm going to pin them down. This back waistband needs to stay flat, but the gathering is going to be all pulled in. Once we're happy with all these gathers, do a row of big stitching just to hold that down. The big stitching goes easier over top of these pleats for the first time. Also, by using those big stitches, if we need to make an adjustment, we can. So I have the gathers on one side, the waistband is straight on the other. And I do have a little bit hanging over on that waistband on both sides. Once I know that I like the look of it, I'm going to be able to put the machine at a regular stitch, stitch another row right over top to secure all of this down. When that little waistband has been stitched on, we can take that top and just iron it down. We also want to press a seam allowance on the side. Where we stopped that fabric, we will be able to press over. So the edge of that apron is going to come along the edge of the fold. And do that to both sides. We will be turning this over and covering this top. But before we do that, we're going to work on the ties. Along 3 of these edges, we're going to do a rolled hem. And a rolled hem is very simply rolling a seam over once, rolling it over a second time, and stitching that down. We want to do the 3 sides. That rolled edge gives us a finished seam. We can leave that straight, or we can fold it over and put a little stitch here to make that tie have a little point. Either way will work fine. With that edge pressed on one side and along the top, this top folded edge will go right along there, and it's going to cover that row of stitching. Before we stitch the waistband down, we're going to be able to put in those ties. This area here has not been closed, so we can fit in that tie. You can gather it, but in my case, I'm just going to fold it in half and just put that right inside and pin this area. And do the same for the other side. Fold it in half and put it right inside that opening. One more row of stitching and we're going to be done. Stitch down so that we secure this tie into that waistband. Stitch along this edge and stitch up. If you'd like, you can continue stitching right along the top. We've secured that tie on, and the apron looks good from both sides. By using a different fabric on each side for the ties, it does give a really cute little look. So from one side or the other side, it's going to match. So we now have that reversible apron. There are many different fabric aprons, but this one with that little scalloped edge was really cute. And by making it reversible, we're going to be able to get a little bit more wear out of it, and it makes it thicker, so it does absorb more. It was a fun project to make. Now I'm going to have to make the adult version. Thank you for joining me today on Sew Very Easy. Feel free to subscribe, and as always, come on back. Let's see what we're making next time in the sewing room. Bye for now.